He gets transported to a world where humans have gone extinct and becomes the most overpowered hero. Shin was an average high schooler who started playing the brand new VRMMO game called The Gate. This was the most advanced game of its time and took the world by storm. Players can explore the world as freely as they wanted to, select their own race and defeat powerful monsters together with their friends. This game was a dream come true for everyone, but one day, this popular game became a death trap, as the servers were jammed and people got stuck inside with no way of leaving the game. When a monster killed someone, that player died in real life as well, which created a huge wave of panic. But Shin was an experienced gamer who protected his fellow players from untimely death and made it his goal to finish the game so they all could return back to their normal lives. After several months, he finally leaves his home and his support characters to enter the final dungeon and face the final boss. The monster lunges forward with an attack, but Shin dodges and backs off before rushing forward and delivering a wild slash, cutting one of the wings off. He thought this would give him some advantage, but to his surprise, the boss simply regenerates his wings back alongside his HP. He realizes that he needs to finish this fight as soon as possible, so he rushes forward and clashes against the enemy before jumping up and delivering hundreds of strikes in quick succession, almost defeating the monster. Before the monster could recover though, he uses his special ability to upgrade his sword and jumps up in the air, striking the monster straight on the head, finishing it off forever. As soon as the monster disappears, the announcement is made inside the game about how the final boss has been defeated, which means that the game is officially over, and people are allowed to log off. He excitedly checks the log sheet to see that all of the players are slowly logging out and disappearing from the list. He makes sure that every single player left before finally he decides to log out. Before he could do that, however, a sudden noise makes him turn around, and he notices that a new gate has been opened behind him. The curiosity gets the better of him, and he decides to check where it leads before logging out. Suddenly, there was a huge bright light, and the next moment when he opens his eyes, he finds himself in a grass field. All of this feels house used to be. To his utter surprise, the house that he built was still there, but suddenly he notices that a bunch of hoodlums seem to be harassing a girl. They ask the girl to tell them where the elf is, but when she refuses to give them the information, they grab her and start taking her out into the forest. The moment she exits the barrier around the house though, a massive monstrous pig appears in front of them, scaring the hooligans away, while she collapses on the ground waiting for her death. Thankfully, Shin slays the beast just as it was about to attack her. He was a poor, disgusting loser, but gets reincarnated as a prince with God. As a poor tells him that this is a letter of introduction. How can he talk so nonchalantly about something so crazy? But Shin She has the gem checked, so he turns towards Elsa and asks whether monsters like Skullface spawn often here. She tells him that monsters are born from grudges and sins of Tells her to get back to the church, but before going she goes near Shin and whispers in his ears that he should save the fox in the northern forest. Shin has no idea what she is talking about, but decides to check it out. The next morning he heads over to Tiara's place, where he asks her to relay a message to Rai. He tells her that he has been trying to send a mail directly, but he can't do it. Tiara looks confused and asks what is he talking about, so he tells her that he has magic cards that he can directly send to the person he wants. But they aren't working when he tries to send it to Rai. To demonstrate that the cards work otherwise, he goes outside the cottage and sends a mail to Tiara which shocks her, and she asks whether she could keep some. He happily gives her the cards and tells her to deliver the envelope to Rai alongside a sword that he produces. The sword supposedly belongs to Rai because in the game, he crafted it for her by using the items dropped by a lot of mythical monsters, and only she can use it. He tells Tiara to convey the message to her that if she remembers the sword and who made it, she should contact him. After that he heads off inside the forest to check what the beast girl was talking about, and suddenly the fog thickens as he arrives near a shrouded temple. He enters inside the mysterious-looking place and peeks inside the shrine only to see a small white fox lying in the middle of a magic circle. He walks up to her and checks the beast, only to find out that the fox has been cursed and poisoned. He immediately uses his ultra-strong purifying magic to heal her, and the fox returns back to consciousness. Suddenly, he feels that something is off and checks his map to see that he is being surrounded by enemies. He goes outside to find a truckload of zombified skeletons walking with swords in their hands intent on killing him. He tells the fox to stay tight while he takes a spear out of his magical pocket and in just 2 extremely powerful magical strikes, ends the lives of all of the monsters. After destroying the entire group without even breaking a sweat, he checks his map once again, thinking that all is clear when he spots that there are 2 more monsters nearby. It turns out that the statues near the gate were petrified monsters who finally break free and attack him. They are both level 675, which is insanely high, but he dodges their attacks and tries to use his Shadowbind magic to trap them. The monsters turn out to be pretty strong and release a thick fog like magical smoke that completely covers the entire area, blinding Shin and hurting the fox, while the beasts attack Shin from the darkness as he tries to dodge. He keeps dodging their attacks while trying to think of a way out of this problem when the fox directs him towards the magical circle inside the shrine. He immediately runs inside, and to his surprise, the smoke clears up and he is able to see clearly. Before they could attack, he uses his special legendary binding magic, and once they are trapped, he releases the full power of his spear, and in one devastating thrust, he completely destroys both the monsters from existence. Soon the smoke clears up, so he checks up on the fox once again. But to his utter surprise, the fox turns out to be level 211 monster called Elemental, which was the highest tier monster present inside the game. This was a really lucky break as he decides to keep the fox as his pet who could accompany him on his journey to find a way back home. He starts walking back, but realizes that considering how rare and unbelievably strong this elemental fox can be, it could become problematic as some people might attack him and try to steal her away. To make sure it doesn't happen, he decides to form a bond with the fox, in the process known as taming. After a beast has been tamed, only its owner can see the stats, and this way, everyone will think that she is just a normal fox. He turns towards the fox and asks whether she would want to be tamed by him. And to his surprise, the fox seems willing to do so as she trusts him after he saved her life. He begins the process, and after a while, the fox gets successfully tamed. He names his new party member Yuzu, and heads back to the capital. He goes back to the guild where he meets up with the receptionists, who both want to take his report. He asks which one should he give the report to, and the sisters start bickering. He doesn't care about these things, so he walks over to the notice board, where he notices a weird quest. It seems to be put up directly by the church, and it doesn't disclose anything, only asking for a skill-holding adventurer to approach them. He finds it very fishy, but at the same time, he is also curious about it. He decides to take the notice and head over to the church, as this way he could meet Millie as well. He reaches the church where he meets up with a nun named Trya. She asks what is he doing here, and he honestly replies that he doesn't really know much about the church, but came here after checking the quest. The nun immediately gets interested and asks whether he is a skill holder. He tells her that he would reveal everything, but he would like to gather some information as well. He asks whether Millie the Beast Girl is around, and the nun seems suspicious, but takes him back to the guest room. He waits while wondering what powers does Millie possess, as she told him to save the fox before. Finally, the door opens and Millie enters the room, happy to see him. She immediately runs up to him and starts hugging him, which softens the nun a little bit, as she claims that now she knows that he is not a bad person, because Millie usually doesn't like company. He asks whether he can start the business talk now, and the nun gives him her permissions. He immediately looks at Millie and asks whether this is the fox that she was telling him to save. Millie takes a look at his head and happily claims that it is indeed the fox that she thought was in danger and thanks him for saving it. Shin smiles and tells Yuzu to thank Millie, as she is the one who asked him to save her life. Yuzu immediately comes down and thanks Millie, while Shin turns towards the nun and asks about the quest. She tells him that he must be a skill holder to be able to see the quest, which makes Shin realize that even though having certain skills were very common in his world, it must be a very rare thing in this new world. She tells him that they are looking for a particular skill holder who can teach one of the church's nuns that skill. He asks whether they want the heal or the curse skill, but the nun shakes her head and claims that due to certain circumstances, they really need to learn the purify skill. She looks down thinking that there is no way this guy knows the skill, but Shin simply replies that it is a hassle to learn that skill. She is shocked and asks whether he means that he knows the skill, and Shin replies that he does. She asks whether he would accept the quest, but he replies that he wants something in return for the job. She starts talking about gold and money, but he tells her that he is not interested in that and would like repayment in some other way. Just as the nun was going to break her vow of celibacy, Shin stops her and tells her that he simply wants to know details about the church and about the powers the Millie possesses. She looks unsure about it, and it makes sense, but Shin knows way too less about this world, and having the church as his informant would be very helpful. The nun was having trouble making the decision, but Millie speaks up and tells Traya that it is fine, and that she can trust Shin. Traya ends up taking the advice of a 6-year-old, and tells Shin that she can give him all the information about who comes and goes from the church alongside other details. She then tells him that Millie has the power of an oracle and can predict future sometimes. She has never been wrong in her predictions even once, and that's why they try to keep it a secret, because some evil men can try to take her away for their own benefit. To prevent that from happening, Will usually stays nearby, and because he is such a feared warrior, people stay away and don't mess with them. He then asks when would she like to learn the skill, but Trier replies that it is not her who is supposed to learn it, but the granddaughter of the previous priest because of some religious reasons. Later that day, Shin tries to mingle with the other children, but they all seem to be enchanted by the beautiful fox, while they completely ignore Shin and Millie. Shin doesn't know how to get closer to the kids, but Millie has had enough and wanted to pet Yusu, so she calls him over to Shin, and then takes her in her arms, cuddling and petting the pretty beast. All the children watch in amazement and jealousy, but when Shin tries to talk to them, they run away. One of the older kids walk up to him and asks whether he is the one who is going to help them. Shin replies that he did take the quest and asks for more information about it. The little girl tells him that currently the church doesn't have a priest, so there are 2 candidates. The most promising candidate is a man who wants to destroy the orphanage completely and make his own house here. Shin asks why would he want to destroy the orphanage, and the kid replies that because they all hate this man, and he is also a money-grubbing pig. Shin asks why can't Traya become the priest, but the kid tells him that only a person with a purify skill can become a priest, and the other candidate is Rash, the late priest's granddaughter. She pleads with him to help them, and he tells them not to worry. Later that day, he meets up with Rash, who seems to be a nice girl, but pretty clumsy and careless. He introduces himself and claims that he will teach her the purification magic, but warns her that it will totally depend on how she practices and whether she is able to complete the training. He then asks whether they know any places where high-level monsters spawn, and Trier replies that there is a very well-known spot in the faraway forest. Before he can get any further information, the door opens and Will enters the door, with a scowl on his face, and asks why did he take the quest. He asks what he asks for in return, and Shin honestly tells him about his deal with Traya. Will thinks that they are trusting him a bit too much, as he is still a no-name new adventurer, but Millie insists that Shin is fine. Will still puts his lance on his throat and warns him that if any information about Millie's power get leaked, he will kill him with his own hands. Will then asks more about the purifying skill and how to learn it, So Shin explains that you first need to have a holy gem with you, which is very hard to find. After that you need to defeat over 200 undead monsters, and each should be at least level 150. The good thing is that only the killing blow matters, so his plan is to weaken the monsters to the brink of death, so that Rash can easily kill them off. Even Will is shocked at this because level 150 monsters are no joke. Shin, however, reassures them that he can do this, and insists that the harder part would have been to find a holy gem, but thanks to the power of plot armor, he already has the gem, so they can begin the process immediately. They decide to start the quest at night, and all of them go back to have some rest. While Shin was walking down to have some food, he gets ambushed by Will, who was waiting for him, and he takes him into a tavern for a talk. They have a deep bro talk, while Will explains that according to myths, every so often a person known as the Chosen One is born who has all the knowledge and memories from his previous life and is extremely strong. Shin wonders how this sounds similar to his reincarnation story, when suddenly he gets a message from Tiara, who claims that Rai replied and told Shin that she wants to meet him the moment she comes back from her job. After that, Shin takes out his letter of recommendation to flex on Will, but surprisingly even he has one. They touch tips together, which strengthens their bond even more, and a couple of hours later, head down to the dark forest. They walk for a while, after which they finally find their first wave of monsters. The dog monster attacks them, but Shin immediately freezes them in the air and tells Rash to use her heal magic to kill them. She was unsure at first but quickly deals with them. Will takes care of the next wave of skeletons with his lance, and Rash destroys them as well. After killing a bunch of waves, they finally head over to the deeper ends, where Will uses his adventurer's card to open a barrier which is put in place to stop new adventurers, as this area is dangerous. They enter the area, and immediately Shin notices some monsters on his minimap. Will goes ahead to deal with the ones ahead, while Shin weakens the ones nearby, and lets Rash end them. He tells her that by the time she learns to purify magic, she might become level 150 herself. Finally, Will comes back with a bunch of corpses and hands it over to Rash, who screams in horror at this sight. Meanwhile, much deeper in the forest, the princess and her party are dealing with a giant monster. She uses her giant sword to finish the demon and realizes that without this sword, which came through her window, killing this monster would have been very difficult. She then tells one of her party members to help the other group, so she runs over to the nearby lake. The other party seems to be on their last leg, barely managing to survive against the giant monster. But the white-haired lady enters the fray and uses her ultra-fast strikes to slice the monster in pieces and breaks its core in half. She lands on the ground, and her hair starts flying as the knight realizes that it's the famous white-haired elf, Rai. Rai uses a spell called Wide Heal to immediately heal all the injuries the knights have sustained. The knight captain kneels before her and thanks her, and she says that she wouldn't have been able to defeat the monster if they hadn't weakened it. With that, Rai takes off to investigate the nearby regions for more monsters and tells the knight captain to signal her if something comes up. She does the Naruto run through the forest, and the only thing on her mind is that she can soon meet her master again. Meanwhile, Will is facing one giant skeleton monster alone, and he manages to bring it down with just one hit from his spear. He tells Rash to finish the monster, and she casts the heal magic on the monster's broken core to defeat it. She suddenly starts glowing as the monster is defeated, and Shin says that it is just the special effect to tell her that she is eligible to learn a new skill. Rash seems spaced out, and Will asks if she is fine. She explains that her mind was suddenly full of information about how to use a skill. Shin congratulates her and says that now they should quickly return to the city. Suddenly, Yuzu notices something, and as Shin looks around, his gaze also gets stuck on something. Will and Rash also look in the direction and find dark energy from all over the forest gathering in the sky. Will says that it is the magic matter that reanimates dead creatures into monsters. The dark sphere in the sky finishes absorbing the magic matter, and then it starts changing its shape while descending to the ground. It takes the form of a giant night monster, and Shin reads its status to find that it is a level 804 Skullface Lord. The monster suddenly leaps high into the sky and hits the barrier cast by the Adventurers Guild, shattering it along with Rash's hope to escape the place alive. The monster lands back on the ground and looks towards Shin and his group, and they instinctively know that they should run away. The giant monster roars and summons an army of skeleton monsters to surround them. Will panics and asks Shin to help him break through the monster horde so that they can escape, but he replies that he is going to stay here. Shin removes the limiter he had placed on his power, and Will is overwhelmed on seeing his true abilities. Shin declares that he can't let the monsters roam free and cause destruction, so he will stop them here. He asks Will to head back and take Rash and Yuzu with him, and casts a physical enhancement buff on him. Will tries to grab Yuzu, but she tightly latches on to Shin, refusing to let go of him. He understands her feelings and lets her stay with him. He then uses a powerful lightning spell to destroy all the skeletons in front of him and opens a safe passage for Will and Rash to run away. Shin then summons his sword and rushes towards the monsters. Yuzu uses a flame attack and takes down a large number of monsters at once, but the giant monster roars and calls more monsters to its aid. In response, Shin uses a powerful red thunder beam to annihilate the skeleton monsters, and the glow of his attack is witnessed by Rai, who flies towards his location. Shin notices that his attack took down many monsters, but his minimap is filled with red dots. He sighs, hoping that Rai could come to help him, and then he would be able to fight better. Just as he wishes that, a blue dot appears on the minimap, flying towards him and clearing all the monsters on the way. Shin figures out what it means and immediately runs away from the battlefield to arrive at a field of flowers. There, he finds Rai, and they look at each other dramatically with flower petals flying in the air. Shin asks her if she has been well, but then the skeleton monsters intrude on them. Yuzu jumps down and casts a barrier to give Shin some privacy, and he thanks her before turning to Rai. Before he can say anything, Rai hugs him tightly. Shin apologizes for abandoning her for so long, and thanks her for watching over the shop, but she grips him tightly to suggest that she doesn't want that. Shin is confused because he hasn't mastered the art of understanding women yet, but then he realizes what Rai truly wants. He tells her that he is back home, and she cries as she welcomes him. However, their touching moment comes to an end when Yuzu runs out of energy and her barrier disappears. The giant monster appears there, and Shin tells Rai that they should deal with it first before catching up on lost time. Both of them raise their hands and chant a spell called Sanctuary. A golden ball of light flies towards the sky and creates a radiant circle there. The light of the magic circle destroys all the monsters it touches, and Yuzu instantly gets all her lost energy back. Even the boss monster weakens after getting affected by the light, and Shin draws his sword to finish him. He jumps high and hits the monster with all his might, shattering its core. The skeleton monster falls, but before dying it tells Shin to give his power to him. Shin is shocked to see a monster speaking, and as it disappears, he picks up its core. After dealing with the monster, Shin tells Rai that since they are already here, they should talk things out while walking. They reach the ruins of an old building, and Shin tells her what happened on the day he went to defeat the final boss of the game, and how he came here without his will. Rai also remembers that the dungeon suddenly disappeared, and so did the masters of other NPCs. She knew that Shin had cleared the game, but since she did not disappear, she believed that he was still in the game. Since that day, Rai and Shin's other NPC Servast have been looking for him all over the world. Shin then suddenly asks Rai to stop calling him master, because it would be chaotic if anyone heard a legend like her calling a seemingly normal guy her master. He asks her to call him by his name, and Rai blushes as she does that. Even Shin feels a bit weak in the knees on hearing her call his name. She then asks about his next step, and Shin says that he is going to investigate a sacred site he read about in the library. Rai asks if he plans to return home, and when Shin affirms, she feels betrayed and sad. She knows that it was the expected answer, and accepts it without complaining. Shin changes the topic and asks how much does she remember from the game, and she replies that she remembers everything. She claims that after he cleared the game and all the players vanished, she became more aware of herself. She and the other NPCs were partially aware during the game too, but they were not fully conscious and could not take independent actions. They watch the sunrise, and after that they decide to return to their shop. However, before that, Rai wants to know about Yuzu. Shin tells her that Yuzu is his partner and an elemental, and Rai says that she knew that the fox was special just by looking at her tails, but could not guess that she was an elemental. Shin expresses surprise at this because he hadn't noticed anything. He lifts Yuzu up, and for the first time notices that she has 3 tails. If that wasn't enough of a surprise, Yuzu suddenly tells him good morning, and Shin freaks out. The fox reveals that her mind cleared after the large monster yesterday disappeared. Things make sense to Shin now, and he forbids Yuzu from talking in front of people, so she decides to talk to him through telepathy. Rai believes that her 3 tails will be a problem, but Yuzu can easily merge them into one to pretend to be a normal fox. Shin praises her, and as Yuzu basks in his praise, Rai finds her unbelievably cute. Shin understands her hesitation and lets her pet and cuddle with the fox, and Rai says that it is the first child elemental she is seeing because all others were adults. They decide to depart to the capital with that. Meanwhile, Will has been running all night while carrying Rash on his back, and she is worried about Shin. He tells her that Shin will be fine, and then suddenly, he feels something speeding towards them. He stops and turns around to face whatever is coming towards them, only to find that it was just Shin and Rai. Rash faints from a panic attack, and even Will is not happy that Shin gave them a jump scare. On the other hand, the princess and her guards come across the huge hole in the ground caused by Shin's attacks. The princess thinks that this hole in the ground is connected to the appearance of the magic circle in the air that destroyed all the skeleton monsters. She wonders who could have done that when one of her knights comes there with the sword Shin used to cast the earth-shattering skill. The knight shows the princess a falcon symbol on the hilt of the sword, and states that a very skilled swordsmith puts this symbol on the weapons he creates. He demonstrates that despite being damaged, the sword is powerful enough to split the ground with barely any effort from his side. The knight says that he has heard that there was only one blacksmith in the world who could forge swords this powerful. Legend has it that he was a high human and was called the Peerless Black Swordsmith. If you liked this video, make sure to subscribe for part 5, and make sure to check out this brand new anime about a weird loser who turns out to be the strongest fighter in high school.